Welcome to Francis Reads the Bible. Today I'm on to Genesis 41, and Genesis chapter 41 is about Joseph's restoration and upliftment. So it's still about dreams, anyways. After 2 years had passed, King of Egypt dreamed that he was standing by the Nile River when 7 cows, fat and sleek, came up out of the river and began to feed on the grass. Then 7 other cows came up, they were thin and bony. They came and stood by the other cows on the river bank, and the thin cows ate up the fat cows. Then the king woke up. He fell asleep again and had another dream. 7 heads of grain, full and ripe, were growing on one stalk. Then 7 other heads of grain sprouted, thin and scorched by the desert wind, and the thin heads of grain swallowed the full ones. Then the king woke up and realized he had been dreaming. Okay, so it's been 2 years since the king's wine steward was restored to his position and the chief baker was killed. And it's been 2 years since he forgot about Joseph. Can you imagine Joseph praying for nights? God, please let this wine steward remember me. Let him remember me. Something like that. 2 years. And he was in that prison way before they came in and he stayed, and now it's been 2 years. And Joseph really suffered. So looking at this dream, these two dreams, they were really bad. Imagine so a skinny cow swallowing a fat cow. Just imagine one of it. Then in the morning, King was worried. He sent for all the magicians and wise men of Egypt. He told them his dreams, but no one could explain them to him. Then the wine steward said to the king, "Oh, finally he remembers. I must confess today that I have done wrong. You were angry with the chief baker and me, and you put us in prison in the house of the captain of the guard. One night, each of us had a dream, and the dreams had different meanings. A young Hebrew was there with us, a slave of the captain of the guard. We told him our dreams, and he interpreted them for us. Things turned out just as he said. You restored me to my position, but you executed the baker." You see, there's nothing like the perfect timing. He could have just remembered Joseph then, and the king wouldn't have done anything. But this was the perfect time for Joseph to be remembered, if you ask me. So, yes, God's timing is always perfect, it is never late, it is always on time. The timing was just perfect for Joseph. So, when he told the king this, the king sent for Joseph and he was immediately brought from the prison. So, he was brought from the prison. After he had shaved and changed his clothes, he came into the king's presence. He couldn't appear before the king looking like some prisoner. This is a king, and to come into a king's presence, you have to look clean and fresh. So then the king said to him, "I have had a dream, and no one can explain it. I have been told that you can interpret dreams." And Joseph answered, "I cannot, your majesty, but God will give a favorable interpretation." Then the king went on to narrate the dreams all over again, what happened, you know, the exact dreams he had, the one about the cows and the heads of grain for Joseph. And in 24, I told dreams to the magicians, but none of them could explain them to me. Then Joseph said to the king, "The two dreams mean the same thing. God has told you what he is going to do. The 7 fat cows are 7 years, and the 7 full heads of grain are also 7 years. They have the same meaning. The 17 cows which came up later, and the 17 heads of grain scorched by the desert wind are 7 years of famine. It is just as I told you. God has shown you what He is going to do. So, this was a dream of revelation. There will be 7 years of great plenty in all the land of Egypt. After that, there will be 7 years of famine, and all the good years will be forgotten because the famine will ruin the country. The time of plenty will be entirely forgotten because the famine, which follows, will be so terrible. The repetition of your dreams means that the matter is fixed by God and that He will make it happen in the near future. Remember, Joseph has had, like I said, it's in previous chapter, he's had many years of practicing, he's harnessed this gift of dream interpretation, and dreaming dreams. So he can interpret dreams because he has the spirit of God. God has given him this ability, to be able to interpret dreams. And he harnessed it. He didn't just wake up one morning and start interpreting dreams. No, he started from when he was young. That's the thing. See how God used this gift that Joseph had, harnessed for years from childhood to raise him up. This ability to interpret dreams, he harnessed it. He he was able to do it. He didn't just stop using. I think sometimes when you stop using certain gifts, even spiritual gifts, they fade away, like they stop working. But Joseph harnessed his ability to interpret dreams. So then God also gave him wisdom. See what he said next to the king. Now you should choose some man with wisdom and insight and put him in charge of the country. You must also appoint other officials and take a fifth of the crops during the 7 years of plenty. Order them to collect all the food during the good years that are coming and give them authority to store up grain in the cities and guard it. The food will build a reserve supply for the country during the 7 years of famine which are going to come on Egypt. In this way, the people will not starve. The king and his officials approved this plan. See, God didn't just give him the interpretation of the dream, God also gave him the wisdom to know how to prevent the what's it called, the famine, or how to survive, what to do. Okay, the solution, yes, to the problem that the dream was going to bring about, that the warning that was coming, God also gave him the solution, the knowledge, how to survive it, how to counter it, how to prepare for what was coming. And so the king said to his people, the officials, we will never find a better man than Joseph, a man who has God's spirit in him. So obvious. Because even before he interpreted the dreams, he said, it is God who gives the ability to interpret dreams, not him. He gave all whatever back together. He even spoke about that God is telling you this. And God, it was so clear that God wanted him to be the only one to know that solution, to interpret the dream and to give a solution. No other person in the whole kingdom could interpret these dreams, and no one else even had a solution. It was just Joseph. So the king said, God has shown you all this, so it is obvious that you have greater wisdom and insight than anyone else. I will put you in charge of my country, and all my people will obey your orders. I can imagine how Potiphar's wife felt. Yeah, Joseph, that man little boy that refused to sleep with me. Your authority will be second only to mine. I now appoint you governor over all Egypt. The king removed from his finger the ring engraved with the royal seal and put it on Joseph's finger. He put a fine linen robe on him and placed a gold chain round his neck. He gave him the second royal chariot to ride in, and his guard of honor went ahead of him and cried out, "Make way! Make way!" And so Joseph was appointed governor over all Egypt. This is what they call, this is not a double promotion, this is a promotion of all promotions, from grass to grace, from prison to palace. It's this is what they call a divine turnaround, an instant miracle, like a life going from 0 to 100 in a second. Only God can do that, man. Only God. Only God can make this happen. See, in the whole country, in Egypt, that is full of astrologers, magicians, wise men, nobody, no one, all the wise men, all the magic, nobody could interpret these dreams. Nobody even had a solution. Only Joseph, a servant, a Hebrew slave, a an imprisoned Hebrew slave, was the one going to save the whole country. Only God could have done this. Because you can't tell me there weren't people that were more learned, more educated, more. But God used this ability of Joseph to make a way for him, to change his story from 0 to 100, grass to grace. Man, this is speaking to me on so many levels. Like, I'm getting chills right now. So the king said to him, "I am the king, and no one in all Egypt shall so much as lift a hand or a foot without your permission." He gave Joseph the Egyptian name Zaphenath Paneah, and he gave him a wife, Asenath, the daughter of Potipharah, a priest in the city of Heliopolis. Joseph was 30 years old when he began to serve the king of Egypt. Remember when we heard of Joseph last with his family, he was 16. 16. Joseph has been in captivity for 14 years. 14 hellish years, but God was with him through it all. So he left the king's court and traveled all over the land. During the 7 years of plenty, the land produced abundant crops, all of which Joseph collected and stored in the cities. In each city, he had a plan and he went about it, preparing for the 7 years of famine. That's what he was doing. So, before the years of famine came, Joseph had two sons by Asenath. He said, "God has made me forget all my sufferings and all my father's family." So he named his first son Manasseh. Then he also said, "God has given me children in the land of my trouble." So he named his second son Ephraim. So these are the meanings of those names. So Manasseh is forgetting all sufferings, and all his father's family, and Ephraim is children in the land of his trouble. I can imagine Joseph knowing, as in that day he was sold, crying, begging his brothers, "Don't sell me, forgive me, whatever I've done wrong." Can imagine the spectacle, the brouhaha, oh my, that happened that day. And they sold him to those Ishmaelites. It's terrible. And it's been 14 years of being a slave in that man's land. But now God has restored him. Now he has two kids, a wife. I'm sure Joseph never even imagined that this could happen. I'm so happy for him. I don't even know him. It's a Bible story, yes, but God still does things like this today, taking people from 0 to 100, turning lives around overnight. I'm speaking into my life, and maybe if you're listening to this, I don't know what it is. Francis, God can do it. God can change that situation. Wow. Just see Joseph. So happy for him. For being sold by his family, hated, being forgotten in prison. Even when he thought help had come, he was forgotten. Then instantly, the perfect timing, things turned around. So the 7 years of plenty that the land of Egypt had enjoyed came to an end, and the 7 years of famine began, just as Joseph had said. There was famine in every other country, but there was food throughout Egypt. When the Egyptians began to be hungry, they cried out to the king for food. So he ordered them to go to Joseph and do what he told them. The famine grew worse and spread over the whole country. So Joseph opened all the storehouses and sold grains to the Egyptians. Imagine a slave. You know, God is good. People came to Egypt from all over the world to buy grain from Joseph because the famine was severe everywhere. Wow. Wow. I'm going to end this here before it gets too long, but wow. That situation, Frances, that situation is not too big for God to handle. He is God, the Lord of all flesh. There is nothing too hard for him to do. See what he did for Joseph, you know? As always, this is Frances Reads the Bible with me, Frances Okeke. God bless you. Goodbye and take care.